How's it going again, guys? It is once again brutally hot in Central Texas. I apologize, I haven't been posting videos past month or so. It's been extremely busy. I haven't really had time. And truthfully, I've been waiting on parts for the Fiero. Now, luckily, those are all finally here. And I'll show you that here in a little bit. We have the flywheel, we have everything ready to go. So that motor, that car can go together. I just need a couple days where I actually have 2 days off, 2 or 3 days off in a row to solidly work on that, and I can actually put that together. But in the meantime, some things have become apparent to me on the truck, the never-ending project. There's always something broken. Well, lately it has been having a little bit of a noise issue coming from the rear end. I don't know for sure what it is. I guess it could be bearings in it, it could be the gears are worn out, it could be the crush sleeve. There's a whole lot of stuff in the differential that can make noise. But I started thinking about it more and more. This differential came out of a junkyard truck. It was only, well actually I really have no idea what the history was. I bought a $100 differential offline, they shipped it to me, I threw it in the truck. It sounded better than the one that was in it, but this has now been 6-7 years, something to that effect, and the gear oil in it is from then too. And believe it or not, I've put 30,000 miles on this truck in that time frame. I started looking around and stuff, and I found out that Dodge actually recommended that you change the gear oil about every 30,000 miles or every 2 years. So it's overdue, or at the very least it is due. So we're gonna try changing the gear oil out in it, see if that calms down a little bit of the noise. What we're hearing is really kind of a little bit of a howling that starts at about 39 miles an hour and runs its worst till about 55. Then it'll tail down. You can still hear it at high speed, but it's really in that range, which unfortunately is most of your in-town cruising, which is really obnoxious. So we're gonna see if we can do anything about that. I've got a new diff cover gasket. I've got the gear oil and everything over there. So the other thing too I ran across is, so I recently went to the junkyard and I started looking for parts for this truck. They had a 93 sitting in a junkyard. I didn't really know if the fan shroud was gonna fit or anything like that, but I really wanted to see if I could find a bunch of odds and ends. Got there, truck was completely stripped, wasn't much of anything to take, but I did find this. Let's go ahead and pick it up so you can see it. This is the core for a headliner, which my truck, I'm suspicious it probably had one at one time. I think someone ripped it out, threw it away because it probably got messed up. But these cores, now they make them out of plastic, but they're about 200 bucks a piece. So I started thinking, wouldn't it be nice to actually have a headliner in this truck with fabric and whatnot, so it actually insulates a little more temperature out of it for the AC to work a little better, insulates a little more noise out. You don't quite have that echo bouncing off the steel roof. So we're gonna try and tackle that today. So what order of business today is, we're gonna do the dirty stuff first. I'm gonna crawl under here, change out the gear oil, see how that goes. And then I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to recover this thing. It's pretty simple, really. Honestly, if you have a falling headliner, the hardest thing is getting this thing in and out of a car without breaking all your trim. Once it's out, spraying the adhesive down and putting all the fabric on it is real easy. So that being said, let me crawl under here, start pulling it apart, and we'll get it going. Okay, so this is our differential. This is what is called a Chrysler 8 1/4. They're kind of the lowish, middle-ish range for Dodge and Chrysler rear ends. I'm no expert, but basically, I think you've got like a 7 3/4 or 7 1/4 rear end of the little ones for like the little passenger cars. 8 1/4 is kind of the common light-duty pickup truck rear end. Then they have an 8 3/4, which also looks similar, and a 9 and some odd. But basically, they've got all these different differentials. This is the most common one. This is the one that we got the parts for. You can see these are the junkyard markings for mine. One of the things that you would oftentimes want to do is, let's say you're working on something that's Chevrolet or something like that, they'll often have a drain plug and a fill plug on the side up here, so you don't have to pull this cover. If you do have something like that, always make sure you pull the fill first, because if you pull the drain and then you can't refill it, obviously we've got a problem. So, but this is more of an older, more traditional setup. What you'll do is you'll pull the bolts, let it open, drain out the bottom, and we'll refill it to here, and this is our sight hole. So we'll fill it up until it starts to run out, close it up, and we'll be fine. So, with that being said, let me start pulling bolts. Generally the way you're going to want to do this, apparently I gapped the bottom of the rear end there at some point. Can I bend that down? Get a screwdriver for that. Let's see if I can pry this down. This is like probably, it's real dirty right now, but my guess is that's actually the tag that tells you what the gear ratio is. A lot of times, if you take one of these differentials apart, somewhere on here, there will be something stuck under a bolt or somewhere. It'll be a little piece of sheet metal like this, and it'll have either a part number or a gear ratio to indicate what the rear end is. A lot of times they're gone, but if you have one, keep it. So we're going to start by just loosening all of them. And again, we start from the bottom. This is really pretty typical, pretty common maintenance stuff. So there's plenty of videos on this. So we're gonna get into just the basics of it today. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pull. Now they're all loose. I'm gonna pull, starting right here. I'm just gonna take these out so that it can kind of tilt and dribble. Pull this out. See if I can get. You don't want to bend this up too much, but you are going to have to stick something in here and kind of pry at it to see if you can get it loose. So here, try to contain the mess. Glued it on here to stay last time, apparently. Okay. There we go. And gear oil, if you haven't messed with it, is some of the nastiest smelling stuff you will ever encounter in a car. Although, in my opinion, I don't like it, but I don't mind it as much. What I really hate is brake fluid. So I'm just going to let that drain out. So again, here's my conundrum. Like that gear oil you probably saw looks pretty clean coming out, which is usually the way I was always taught to kind of judge gear oil. But I'm kind of hoping, it might be a fool's hope, but I'm kind of hoping that it's just thinned out to the point where or it has no heat resistance, so when it gets hot it just thins to basically water and the diff is getting loud and hot. I'm hoping we change it out, it'll be a little quieter. So really that's most of the noise when you go down the road in this thing is differential. It's noisy. Alright, but that's gone through now, so I'm going to pull this off. Alright. So there's our gear set. You've got, this is an open differential, and I can't spin it because we're on the ground. But basically this will spin and rotate both sides. These spider gears will kind of all spin together. But this stuff is your adjustments for your side to side and pinion play and all that. And all that stuff is pretty critical. If it's off, you'll prematurely wear things out and make a bunch of noise, that howling that we're worried about. And there's a potential that the bearing that's all the way in the front, there's a bearing in what's called a crush sleeve, that when you put it together, if those are worn out, have too much play, they'll howl, they'll make noise. Also, these gear sets will make noise and howl if they're worn out. I don't see any crazy wear in here. There's some goop in here. This was the bottom part of it, but no big chunks really. That's silicone. No big chunks of anything. Really, differentials go, it's like some goopy molly type stuff, but no big chunks of anything, no chipped teeth, I don't think. I think we're okay. And again, this truck has the 355 ratio in it. The two common ones for these first gen Rams were 322, at least in this generation, right around the late 80s, would have been a 322 or a 355. And this one's a 355 variety. But we're going to let it drain out, and then we're going to scrape all the gasket off. I'll have to remove all the gasket off the cover. Once that's done, we'll clean it all out, stick it back on with the gasket, and refill it. And hopefully this thing quiets down. So let me get some brake clean to keep draining it out, and a razor blade, and we'll get it cleaned up. Okay. Hope the fan's not making too much noise. Kind of my life support out here. Okay. So this is the differential cover that was under the truck. Also pay attention when we put these on. A lot of times they're only going one way, but just remember which side your plug was on. So you put it back on, it goes back on the same way. But I'm going to start by trying to scrape some adhesive or some silicone gasket material off this. Like I said, the last time I did this, it was just silicone I put on here. I didn't put an actual gasket. So I'm kind of hoping it all comes off fairly easy. I might have to wire wheel it. Let's see. I almost certainly will, but just keep scraping it. Get the big stuff off. You can see, or you can probably see, there wasn't a whole lot of debris in this thing. I mean, it's got some moly grease and stuff in there, or moly. I say moly. It's microscopically ground up metal is what it is, but that's turned into a paste. But really not that bad. Take a dirty rag, wipe it out real quick, just try and get as much solid material out as I can. Clean her rag, wipe it out. I think I'm gonna have to, maybe not wire wheel, but rule the inside. So let me get the compressor turned on. Alright. See the squints. Still a little bit of gummy stuff stuck in the stamping, but hopefully I'm not real worried about that. stuff really doesn't evaporate like other brands do. Alright. Okay. Let's say that is cleaned up enough. Put it clean down in the plug. That you can start scraping it off the differential housing and putting it back on. The benefit too of going back with an actual gasket is that this thing's not going to have to sit for a full 24 hours before you can drive it again. You can just throw it back together. So, when we get back under the truck, we'll throw it on there. In fact, actually, let's just make sure. Always test fit your gaskets. Always. Alright, yeah, so I'd say that lines up enough that we can put it on there. So, that'll work. So let me get back under there and throw this thing together. Under here, start scraping old gasket material off the differential housing. Luckily, this is a little easier to do because this is an actually machined surface. It's not a stamped cover. You really can just kind of scrape it. Just run a razor blade over it. It should pretty much all come off. That's fun. I'm going to drop that in the oil so it's slippery. Hard to hold on to. It'll be good. As much as possible. Let's see how this cleans up. We might have to drag the bzz down here too. Let me try drying it up a little bit first and see what we get. And also, when you're in these enclosed spaces under here, be careful for a couple reasons. One of which, if you're spray and brake clean to clean this stuff, A, it's very flammable. So like, you just keep that in mind, anything that's going to generate a spark. And B, the stuff can make you feel kind of sick if you breathe in a bunch of it, so be careful with it. Yeah, let me grab the little die grinder and clean it up a little bit. Oh, here. Yeah. Start with the top edge because it's a little easier. Try and be kind to your brake hoses. Also be careful. You don't want your finger caught in this if it's able to move at all. In my case, we're on the ground with the parking brake set, so we're not really at a huge risk for that. Just keep it in mind. We're going to keep rinsing the stuff out of it as best we can. And clean off the outer edge again. The more you can clean out of your differential housing, the less debris there is in there, and the better it is for everything. I pretty much just use a whole can. whatever a whole can will get out of there is usually pretty much enough. Again, I've been at least happy in that I'm not seeing any chipped teeth or chunks of metal coming out of this. It's all basically just grease, which is, you know, kind of what's supposed to be in there. So, fingers crossed that it was just the fluid. I mean, it always had a little bit of a whine, which my understanding is 8 1/4s are kind of known for going down the road, but it's gotten louder, and I'm hoping it's just because the fluid has gotten broken down and it thins out when it gets hot, and you're getting noise out of it, and that just doing this will hopefully quiet it back down to what it used to be, which was a lot more livable. Alright, most of that dried out. A little bit of brake clean on my face. That feels good. I like it when I get a slight burning sensation just below my right eye. That's fun. Okay. So some of you OCD people are probably going to get annoyed here in a second because, wait for it. Hang on. Stand by. Because I did not clean up the cover and paint it with some obnoxious like color and paint it lime green and make a big deal. I did my differential surf. No, this is just honestly don't care. Really don't. So what you're going to do is start a couple of them, line them up through that gasket so that it doesn't move a lot. Like I said, if you've got some of these little pieces of sheet metal that have like potentially information on them, just put them back in place. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the same place they were in, but just put them someplace where, you know, so they don't get lost. That's why they're there. So that if you ever needed a rebuild kit or something, you would know what rear end you have beyond just having to use a spotter's guide. So, put these on. So I'm gonna go ahead and spin these down with the ratchet. I'm not gonna run them all the way down, and the reason is I don't want to over torque them, so I'll do final tightening by hand for now. Crisscross pattern, just kind of snug them. Ratchet. So make sure they're tight. There's a specific torque for this, but I've never used it, never known it. So it's tight. Spin that one down, so let's do it now. Alright, spin my way around now, make sure they're all tight. call that tight. Okay. So we've got a differential cover installed now. So the last thing we need to do is fill it. So I'm going to pop the plug out, which on these Chryslers is a little rubber plug. Like I said, some differentials will have, on the front side of them, they'll have like a drain and a fill. Sometimes you'll have a fill in the front, a drain back here. Just make sure whatever method you need to use to fill it is opened before you drain it. In our case, it's the cover, so it's easy. But in the event you had to do something, you know, I wouldn't want you to have to, you don't need to be trying to drill holes or drill plugs out of differentials. Okay, so Dodge says that these things are supposed to use straight 90 weight. Unless you work in a shop, that's going to be pretty difficult to find these days. And honestly, it's not a bad thing to use like that. This is what I'm putting in here, which is 80-90. Basically, the way that breaks down is it's roughly 80 weight when it's cold, and when it's hot, it's supposed to thicken to 90. As part of what we're banking on was hopefully wrong with the old stuff, was that it lost that property and that ability to become even 80 weight, but certainly lost the ability to be 90 weight. So I'm going to dump this in here. Pull that off. Clippers. Try not to make a giant mess. Alright. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to stick it in here, pour it. What we want to see is filling it, and we're going to keep putting bottles in here until it starts to drain. Once it's running out, I would say it's up to you. You can either let it run until it basically stops and put the plug in, or you can put it in as soon as it starts running. Both are kind of correct. It really doesn't matter. You just don't want to, and you're not going to be able to get significantly over that hole. So I'll go ahead and start putting gear oil in it. And it may look like, you know, well, it wouldn't take very much. But remember, the axle tubes going left and right have to fill as well. So it does take actually a fair amount. To fill this thing. And the stuff's pretty thick, so. Ready? Love gear oil. It's so good. At least there's plenty of room in here. There are some applications. This is a real bear trying to put gear oil in. Should take about 2.5 of these bottles. 2.5, maybe 3. If I'm not mistaken. Which can happen. I have been known to be mistaken. Yeah, looks like we're going to want just a smidge more, because put my finger in here, we were like right below it. So I'm just going to top it off a little. It's really annoyingly close, and there's nothing left in my 2 bottles, I don't think. They're empty. Alright. I just don't want it to be low, so I'm going to top it off just a tiny bit more. off ends so this bottle can stay sealed when I'm done. Alright. Alright, so you see that it's running out. We just got kind of a steady stream. That means we're full. And I am noticing this gear oil does have an almost greenish hue. So maybe the old stuff really was broken down to the point where it wasn't doing any good. Something else to keep in mind too, if you're doing this, and I currently have it this way, but make sure your truck's sitting level, car, truck, whatever, because obviously that changes the orientation for this drain hole. And you know, if it's tilted back, you're going to put less in here than it needs. If it's tilted forward, you'll probably put too much. So there's a specific amount that the manufacturer intends in here, and it has to do with the way the gear oil spins around in here. So that gear that's right here sits in a pool of oil, and when it spins, it's supposed to fling oil around in here. And that's why this is actually shaped in a very particular way to evenly distribute that gear oil on all the gears. And funny enough, if you do some looking online, you look at the trucks guys do now, like big fancy, and they have these big covers with fins. And funny enough, a lot of tests online have shown those actually cause more oil turbulence in here than these do, and generally lead to higher oil temps. They actually generate a heat problem that wasn't there to begin with. So, and an oil distribution problem that wasn't there to begin with. So a lot of times these are fine. Just, I mean, maybe there's a better one for your application if you really want to change it. Do your research. But for me, no, I'm fine. Especially this. This is a simple 8.25. If this truck ever gets a bigger engine, bigger transmission, you know, bigger rear end, okay. But for now, it's still just a pretty typical daily driver kind of truck. So that's done. So let's get out from under here and we'll move on to the headliner. Okay, so this next bit I'm just going to do indoors because truthfully there's no reason not to. But this is the headliner that came out of that old truck. So like I said, this came out of a 93, and this is just a press board core. So it's made out of layers of cardboard, and that's all it is. Now you can buy these new, covered or uncovered. It seems to actually really not affect the price, but they're about $250, and they're actually kind of hard to find in a truck because most of the trucks obviously didn't come with them. And I'm suspicious that mine had one of these in it to begin with, because it has, and you'll see later, or you probably saw earlier, the trim that's in there. Now a lot of it's kind of broken, but mine has the trim. There's no real reason to put it there if you're going to leave the roof the way it was. So I'm thinking someone pulled it out at some point. Well, I've got another. So now I did have to, and I didn't film this, but I did have to scrape off all the old glue so that the surface is smooth and there's not a bunch of powdery substance on it. Easy enough to do. Just take a brush and just scrub, and it will all just kind of come right off. A lot of guys kind of discount these old headliners in cars and just kind of assume it's not worth the effort to try fixing them. I'll just go buy a new one, and I mean, that's fine. Leave more for me and people who don't mind fixing things. But these things are actually a really good deal. I think I paid $48 for it in the junkyard, and like I said, it's $250 for a new one. And I can just throw a new piece of cloth on it, and it should be just fine. So we're gonna go ahead and start doing that. Basically, I've got a spray adhesive. We're going to spray it on here, and then I've already got a piece of fabric cut that's roughly the right size, and we'll lay it down, press it into all the curves, kind of cut it to match, and we'll kind of have to poke holes in it for the various screws and whatnot, but then let it cure, and it can go in the truck, and then we have a headliner. So let's get started. Like I said, I already cut a piece of fabric roughly the right size. You're going to want to test fit this first. If you have something, make sure there's enough material there to cover your headliner. Because if you start putting adhesive down, you're kind of stuck. You know, pun intended. But make sure you have enough here. And in my case, I should have plenty. This is actually fabric that my wife had bought so we could recover the seat, but now you can buy seat kits for about $500, so it's legitimately not even worth the effort anymore of making your own covering or taking this fabric to someone to make a covering, because why bother? You can buy a kit for less than it costs for them to do it. But in any case, so we got enough material here so we can work with it. It is going to be something that you're going to have to smooth it out. If you have a roller or something like that, that would be best. I'm going to see if I can find something roughly cylindrical around here because I don't actually have one of those. But we're going to start by putting our adhesive in the middle, and we'll lay it down, and then we'll work on the sides. But for now, I'm going to pull it off again. So I wasn't really able to find anything, but you get a lot of these tears in these headliners a lot of times. You can repair them from the back, and I kind of already have with these with duct tape, and just kind of patch them together. Once it's got a liner on it, they'll be much more kind of put together again. So don't be discouraged if they're a little bit torn or something like that from age. Just as long as you still have something of a core left, you can work with it. This is the adhesive I'm going to be using. I've not actually used this stuff before, but I've used the other 3M stuff that's specifically for headliners, but it says it's for fabric too, so should be okay. It says super strength. Hopefully it's good. Alright, let me spray. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with basically a line of it. I'm going to try and do a kind of a line along here, and that way I can hopefully get it set and then work my way out. And like I said, we'll do the outer edges last. But my goal is to try and lay this as smooth as I can. So let's see. It's not quite as goopy as the headliner stuff I've used before, but who knows, maybe it'll work just fine. Still smells like headliner glue. Alright, so we've got a layer of glue there. Remember, whatever way you wanted your fabric to be. Need it to be. Like I said, the stuff is going to be workable for a little bit. It doesn't dry immediately, but you want to try and kind of get it as straight as you want it to be. If you have a pattern on your headliner, try and make sure you actually get it something resembling square. It doesn't look all like wampus and like it's not on there straight. And the thicker the headliner material you use, like if you're using something that has a little bit of thickness and padding, the less you'll see whatever the grooves are in the material it's being glued to. So like I've done these before with like flags. I've done it with headliner material. I've done it with felt. And the thing you find is, like, say you're using, like, because when I've done it with flags, I do it with like cheap Chinese made thin fabric. If you do that, it's okay, it works, but it's going to show all the little grooves and everything in it. Little thicker stuff, a little less likely to. This looks like it's kind of in that intermediate realm. It works. Not quite as good as what I did the Fiero in, which was like some thick felt fabric. But I'm going to flip it up, spray a layer of adhesive in here, and we're going to start laying that down. Remember too, like, well, I don't know if you remember, but so the trim in the truck is going to cover around the edges, basically like that. So remember, a lot of stuff right here on the corners is really not going to matter. You've got screws going through with trim. So, although my trim's a little broken, some imperfections around certain spots really won't be as noticeable. And I'm really kind of hoping, well, again, it kind of cools things down in the cab, because it insulates stuff and maybe cuts down on a little bit of noise in the cabin as well. That's always the big thing with that truck is it really is like driving a refrigerator down the highway. I mean, there's no aerodynamics and the wind just kind of beats you up. All right. All right, so I'd say it's covered. Like I said, it's not perfect, but looking at it, just overall, I think it's good enough that once it's installed in an old pickup truck, it will look just fine. The glue is still settling, drying, but we've got our little inserts for our visors cut. Everything's been laid down. I think we're going to be all right. So let me go ahead and go outside, start pulling trim, and we'll start putting this up in there.
pretty happy with that. Might need to wipe it down a little bit in a couple spots. I got handprints, but and I need a couple pieces of trim still. That looks nice.
Alright guys, so that's pretty basic video for today. It's just a lot of work day stuff that have been kind of piling up that I needed to get done. So we got the rear differential service done. Hopefully that quiets it down. Certainly it's going to be healthier for the rear end. So like I said, based on looking around, it was definitely due for the gear oil to be changed. We also have a nice new headliner in the truck. I wasn't planning on doing that at any point, but because that truck happened to have one in it at the junkyard and it was really cheap to do, we have one now. So we'll see if it quiets it down a little bit inside, makes it a little bit cooler. So we'll see about that. I know I said it in the last video, but it is probably actually going to be the next one is going to be the engine swap on the Fiero. It'll probably be, I don't know yet if it's going to be 1 video, 2 videos, how it's going to be done, because it is a lot of work. But we did finally get the flywheel back from the machine shop. So that's all nice and cleaned up. Got all the wiring and everything done on the motor. It's all pieced together and ready to go. The car's prepped. Everything's ready to go. I just need time. I just need a few days when I can actually fully dedicate to it. So we'll get to it, but I appreciate you watching. If you want to like, comment, subscribe, I really appreciate it. It helps the channel grow. Keeps giving me incentive to keep doing this stuff. And I mean, I enjoy doing it. I think other people kind of enjoy watching a little bit too. So thank you for watching. You have a good day.